We're just waiting for Charles. And meanwhile, enjoy the beautiful tunes of Eschatonic Eternal, our buddy Winkler. All the guys are here. It's good to see. You guys got to raise your hands if you want to talk at any point or comment on what we're saying. We'll take calls and stuff, I'm sure. There he is. Hey, you can let yourself talk now. That's a new innovation. Awesome.
Okay, are we going right into it, or
Well, we're live, so you can launch us off.
all right? Hello and welcome to the great Huyte North, your destination for the oasis cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the north. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello.
You doing this fine Monday, or?
Just grinding. I got 51 switch plates
back
to
on the
make.
grind set.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard someone call it grindcore. I'm not sure if that's the right term for that.
Well, I assure you it's not, because I learned that's a genre of metal and not just going to the office at 8 a.m. every morning.
No, yeah, it's not like cottagecore, but like you go to an office. It's a real genre of metal.
What's it like?
I don't know, like it's like what it sounds. Just really heavy, slammy, lots of breakdowns, big breakdown kind of music, mosh pits. That's what it's all about.
Nice. If any of you, if it sounds like shit or anything like that, more than usual, YouTube is the best place to comment. I'll see them in the side here if everything's working okay.
Nice, that's a handy feature.
Um,
Okay, well, let's run through the topics and then we'll get going. So, I want to talk about this FBI glossary for the violent extremism, and then got this. I want to talk about whether you think it's better to be a good texter, or whether it's better to be good at talking on the phone, and then we have another parrot article. This one's Warlord Harem Hypothesis. It's a excellent article about the origins of man and why we developed the way we developed and where blonde hair and blue eyes come from. So
finally, I can
lots of
put
good
my
stuff
2 years
in this.
of university biology to use. I've been waiting all this time.
Okay, hopefully you can run the show on that one.
Yeah, I know.
So did you see this whole FBI thing on
Yeah, I took a look at it.
extremist terms?
Yeah, their signs of extremist terms are hoodlum, whippersnapper. What other language are they using?
Yeah, these guys, like, it's just so funny. They're so far out of date. Like, just normal people use this terminologies. You know, they're worried about people saying red pilled. They're worried about people saying based or cringe, Chad, looks maxing. Really just stuff that is pretty mundane. Like, it's basically meaningless at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I was at a family thing of not my family, but on Sunday, and brother there came up and asked me, because since I started a new job, he's like, "Oh, how are you doing with the normies?" And I did like almost a big double take because I'm like, "What does this guy know? Like, what's he been told?" And then I was like, "Oh, he just means office people." I'm like, oh yeah, they're pretty boring, but I
No,
learned a lot about fishing, you know.
I've seen someone just like yeah, yeah. No, I've seen someone in real life just like say, "Oh yeah, that guy's got the fluoride stare." Like just oh, a normie. He's just saying, "Yeah, there's people out there with fluoride stares."
Yeah,
And like I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, this is something you'd only say if you were, you know, deeply involved." But no, it's just some regular dude out
my
in the
my
world.
70-year-old mom complains about woke people now.
Well, I mean, even the whole terminology of base and cringe, like now that's just what people use to mean good or bad. Like you see a communist or a Marxist, like they just call things base. What if it's like, oh, that guy's into Marxism? Well, he's base.
Well, when Josh
So
Neal was
none of
on,
this has any.
yeah,
Yeah,
but we can credit ourselves for that because when Josh Neal was on some 20 episodes ago or something, maybe 30, we were talking about how we're kind of we're
uh-huh.
not the hippies, but we're the culture that defines this era. Actually, I think that's coming to a close. But like when people think of 2016 to 2022, whatever, they're going to think
Yeah.
of us, and we
Well,
created that
that's what I was
like
gonna say is
yeah go
no, that's what I was gonna say is the FBI is like what 7 years behind. Like this document should have come out in 2016. But like
they did
people
have
like in 2016, yeah, the only people I would say base, cringe, or Chad or whatever, like, sure.
was it in
But now it's
2016 or
just
17 that they
people.
made Pepe a hate symbol?
Yeah, even that was stale. Like they're already in like the 14th iteration of whatever Pepe,
Which is just
by that point.
crazy because we know they're on 4chan all the time now. Like they should be up to date, but maybe 4chan's lagged behind now. I don't know.
Well, I think it's just when you're so abstracted out of the environment, then you can't really keep up and comprehend. Because even reading how the FBI defines these terms on their accord is completely out of touch. So they say, I don't know, like being red pill means society is corrupt. Like that's like it just means someone who thinks society is corrupt.
Hmm.
So okay, like what
I
do you mean?
I guess
Like
Voltaire was
a
pretty
lot of
red
people think
pilled.
society is. Yeah, I was gonna say like when has there been a time in history that like a normal person didn't think there was corruption in society? That's kind of like
Milton
a normal person thing.
corrupt, Jesus corrupt, Marcus Aurelius corrupt.
It's like this terminology, even like it's over is one of these terms, but it's over. We're back. It's over. We're back. But that's you could like distill human history into just people thinking that in alternative cycles. So now apparently just distilling viewpoints that are prevalent throughout history is now an extremist thing. Like, oh, I oversimplified a particular group's view of the world into thinking it's over. Oh, some like
Can we
Saint
do a quick?
Augustine.
I
Saint
gotta.
Augustine when he wrote City of God, he thought it was over.
It's over.
So he's like, oh, the Roman Empire, it's over now. Like, okay, well, I guess that's extremism. Like I used it's over to describe Saint Augustine
I'm
in like a funny, humorous way.
I like how the
It's extremism.
Tao Te Ching escaped that cycle very early. It says the in every overness is backness and every backness is overness. But
Well, and the thing is like it's so like post ironic now with how these like people call themselves incels, and they're just like
women
normal, good looking dudes with families.
women call themselves incels now. It's so over for
Yeah,
incels. Sorry, incel chads, it's over for you.
like people will they'll like eat they'll eat like a pancake breakfast, and then they're like, I'm really pancake pilled. Um, I'm a pancake
Pancake
supremacist.
core syrup cell.
Yeah, so like, I mean, like none of this has any like it's transcended its original meaning from like 7 years ago to the point where it has you can't really pin it down on anything, and anyone can use this terminology in whatever way that fits their particular niche they operate within. and you're gonna say, "Oh yeah, this is all evil extremism."
Actually, okay, I I went over to see what my hippie girlfriend was reading because I just saw she'd left a book on the table, and I'm like expecting it's usually like 40 ways for a vegan diet or whatever, how to like improve your chakras. I go over, it's Douglas Murray's The Fall of the West or whatever. I was like, a little bit based, a little bit based, not
Is that
very based, just a little bit based.
is that British dude?
Yeah, I'd say
Gay
he's
gay British dude?
yeah, I think he's one of the better light Civnat, alt light kind of
Dark Enlightenment,
a
whatever.
height society kind of guys. He's like Jonathan Haidt, it seems to me. Maybe a little better than that.
Uh,
Anyway, it doesn't
I don't
matter.
know. I never read anything by him, so he probably sucks. If I
Uh,
didn't read him, he sucks.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, he's kind of whatever. But yeah. So it's we're
Yeah.
back.
Also,
So
one
I
I
guess what
found
we're saying is we're back.
it's never been over. We're always back. I love I love how like they have a problem with lux maxing. Like lux maxing indicates an intent to become more attractive. The FBI says so. Like a guy wants to look better. Like better watch out for him. He's real threat.
Yeah. I got a haircut. Looks maxing. Oh, here come the cops. Actually,
And they said they're
I've got
gonna.
a whole chocolate Easter bunny I'm munching on right next to me. So I'm well, what's the opposite of maxing? It's not called minning.
Looks minning. Looks
No,
min.
no. Well, I'm looks minning then. But do you eat it ears to ass or ass to ears?
I I don't think it really matters. I would say like start with the ears because they break off easily.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like you're kind of a weirdo if you go ass first. I don't
I
know.
mean, yeah, we could.
Seems wrong.
I don't really want to dive into it, but I mean, it would be a funny bit if we went into the whole like I don't know dissection of how to properly approach the consumption of a chocolate Easter bunny.
Well, I think we already exhausted the
But let's
topic.
not do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably good.
Yeah, we that would be really easy to overdo that.
It's over for Chocolate
Anyways, yeah.
Bunny.
So FBI, yeah.
Yeah, the FBI. So
And I was gonna say it's over. It's over for the FBI. It's just
yeah,
a bunch of dumb boomers.
yeah,
Hard to
cringe,
touch. So
cringe.
yeah,
What's um uh,
cringe. They're a bunch of. It's just incels.
on the same topic? I noticed someone the other day said, "Why are all Zoomers ugly?" Do you have thoughts on this?
That's I don't know what who said that. Like,
Yeah, it was
it's just a
related to
dumb
me.
thing. It's a
Someone
really
told
dumb
me
thing to
that
say.
someone said Zoomers are ugly. I noticed that more of them are.
Okay, that's stupid.
Yeah, I think what they
No,
mean.
I don't think
I
that's true at all.
I think it was an oblique reference to the woke people and like those fat lesbian looking girls with the pink hair and all that.
Oh, well, that's like Gen X and down.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I don't know. I feel like if I feel like if you're thinking Zoomers are just I don't know somehow genetically more ugly than the other generations, I think you're just kind of dumb.
No, but they're
That just seems
skinnier
like
and
a.
got bigger feet on average, and a bit taller too.
Do you have the source? Do you have the data for
Source,
that?
yeah, sources. I made it up. Oh,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
but no,
Cringe.
I don't know where I heard it, but
I don't know. I feel like people that are saying that are just taking a casual glance at the online landscape and then sort of having a selection bias. If you they're like the same, it's the same distribution as it's always been. I would say, arguably, from my experience, there are I don't know about looks wise, but for example, athletics. There's probably a larger proportion of Zoomers that are more athletically gifted than what I saw in millennials. But again, that's something that's more local, so maybe that's not true. But again, I think these are really tenuous claims to make.
yeah. Well, Adderall is probably a better sports enhancing drug than weed, so it would stand to reason.
I'm
Um,
not sure that. Yeah, sure, sure. We'll go with that. Okay, let's. What I wanted to dive in on is, like we said at the start. Do you think it's better to be a good texter or to be good at talking on the phone?
Is like in this is for girls or for life or
No, no, just in general. Like, do you think it's more important to have talent in the one medium versus the other medium? Like, what do you think is
well, since texting is
gonna
a
get you
more
further along?
casual means of communication, I'd say you can be more loose and there's less good and bad at it. Whereas on the phone, that's almost always in a more professional context, or when you're really trying to romance a girl, and then you better kind of be on your A game. And some people are like,
Uh-huh.
they're just terrible on the phone. Like, you call your dentist receptionist, and you're like, why do you do this for a living? You know, like, your flow is terrible. But
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
texting, kind of anything goes, right?
Yeah, the thing I would say is texting is more prevalent overall, and I would say you can get more out of text, and if you can, it's more difficult to be a good texter. And not, I mean, it doesn't necessarily just have to be texting on your phone one to one, but it can be within the context of a group chat or even just social media posting. So I think there's
I feel like
more
this
variability
this
within
must
that.
be a leading question. You're saying that text conveys more than spoken language. Is that what you're getting at? Or
Well,
like,
I would
is it
say
with the
not
accompaniment of?
necessarily. I'm saying if you can develop your texting skill, there's a higher ceiling than talking on the phone.
Hmm.
Like the very basic of texting, yeah, sure, like anyone can do it, and you can hold a conversation. It's very simple. Uh, but your
40.
ability to like just think of like Thomas 777. Like,
Yeah.
can you develop a text style that actually convey? Because normally it's very difficult to convey anything and get any attention on just pure texting.
Pretty much the only one I text is
But
my
if
girlfriend, and it's just heart, 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 monkey covering eyes, okay. And that's all I text. I just
okay,
copy
well,
paste that.
okay, well
But,
that's just gay. Why would you
well,
admit that?
well,
And that's not what you do. You also have your like
okay.
your
Well, you
Telegram
see that?
channel,
Yeah,
for
that's
example. Like that's another.
and I get criticized on my grammar on a daily basis by Strom. I'm not even sure where I'm messing
Yeah.
up at this
Okay.
point.
Well, your grammar. So that now this is to build off of this. The caller, whatever however you say that. Uh, the freedom to develop your own style within
Mm-hmm.
the texting medium, right? Um, so I think with the advent of the printing press and uniform uh, texting or sorry, writing standards. Apparently, before the printing press, there's actually a lot looser um, approach to grammar and speaking words that you're able to use. But when everything became uniform, then we were compelled to strict standards of grammar. And I think even McLuhan makes this point that with like slang, there's no wrong words to use. Like you can kind of just say whatever you want. Like you're a bunch of you're a group of hooligans before the printing press. You just talk whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
and your own group can have meanings that you develop for particular words, string together different sentences that mean their own things according to your tribe, your little group standards. And now with the advent of texting in this sort of decentralized capacity, you can kind of develop your own grammar, your own norms, and uh, you're not bound by a strict uniform set of codes to follow and everything. There's no wrong answer necessarily. Like you can have bad grammar and it's okay. You can like go just throw in all caps at a given point and develop your own style and sort of transcend the strict writing codes. Sort of a return to the pre-printing press era.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So, what does that mean for how culture will proceed?
And I guess with that, well, yeah, I think with that, it number one, it leads to actually what we were just talking about with the previous topic. Um, you have this freedom to develop your own speaking codes and like
Mm.
a language style that is trend setting, and then everyone adopts the language style that you've developed within just a given social media scene, very niche, but suddenly it bursts out, or even within a group chat, and then suddenly some term, some symbol that you use gets mass adopted, and it's all the product of actually stepping outside of the uniform bounds of grammar restrictions, and no one's really there to check you on. Oh, you didn't do thing, you didn't put the comma in the right place, or you spelt this one word wrong. Like people always spell boys with an I now, as opposed to Y. Like there's just like little things like that, and it kind of signals who you are in a certain way.
Yes, definitely. When I used to write back in the day, I went to a grand total one writer's workshop before I realized all writers are complete faggots. And but the one I got took something away from it though, and it was basically that not everyone can write with a voice, and a lot of people write like Chat GPT.
Yes,
Chat GPT is like when they do those that things like here's the average face, and they blend it all together, and it's like some brunette, right? It's got
right, yeah,
that.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. So we should lean into our styles. It's part of the thing.
That's what I'm saying, and it's sort of a new way to develop identity. Um, because you, like I said, you can signal yourself through your unique uh, texting style, whether that's within a scene that you operate within social media on, or whether it's just how you text one on one. But when you break the bounds of a sort of uniform uh, language standard, then that allows you some freedom to reassert an identity. Whereas like this homogenized process of uh, the standards that were brought about by the printing press sort of limits everyone. It does the global homogenization process, right? Everyone's got to be conformed within our strict style. You know, even to the point where you have to cite things the exact same way, whether it's APA or Chicago style or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
But now you don't have these boards and directors that are constantly critiquing the way that you put forth uh, your speaking style through the text medium. And so suddenly this whole there's this potential for an explosion of various identities that can reassert themselves, whereas before everything was sort of locked within a continuing state of homogenization, right? I mean, you can you can figure out who when you're on Twitter, you can figure out who the Indian is and like who the Chinese guy is just by their texting styles, right?
Absolutely.
And so same thing, as you go forward, you probably figure out who's the American, who's a Canadian, and it's sort of a strengthening. It's a new potential for a strengthening of your identity. Um, so I think there's a lot of potential in that.
Yeah. Say, I got a side topic. This just reminded me of. It's just
Mhm.
sideways related, but I saw some Tony Robinson clip. You know that old timey self help guru guy.
Yeah, yeah,
And I guess it's sort of his rundown on his thing. And I hadn't realized that fundamental to his whole thing that he's been pumping for 30 years is basically reestablishing your identity so that you have enough confidence to, do what you want to do. Um,
interesting.
it just reminded me when you said identity. Um, but yeah, part of establishing your identity is, or like reestablishing, recovering it is, well, I think fundamentally you have to start with what are you? Like, what are you already?
Right.
Become who you are is step one, and then after that, you can explore like what you were and where you came from and all that. But how you do this is basically by looking at the world through a lens, right? like,
Hmm.
and so he's training people to like change their lens, have a more positive outlook, and things like this. But he says in order to do that, you need an identity. I just thought that was very curious. And this language is one of those both bottom and top things. It like in the
Right.
cycle, it how you are will change how you talk, and how you talk will change how you are. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's identity is terribly. It's like it's just like genetics or like DNA or whatever. It's really it can be hard to get your finger on where it starts and ends because everything you do will then influence the like feedback loop on it.
Yeah, and like it's one of those things that we were talking about last episode about how um, the heritage that you have, at least through most of human history, was sort of implicit, and you didn't really think about it. Right? You know, fish swim in water. Um, we talked about Parrot's article, and he referenced like the Amish having this implicit ability to defend their ethnic heritage without really needing to explicitly state that, and that is a sort of ideal condition, but it's not necessarily something that's available to a people that have been atomized. So yeah, there's this intentional aspect where you need to again figure out who you really are, and then you can work to establish some of those norms and then become that again in the implicit sense. So yeah, it's sort of this like feedback cycle, like you were saying, and not necessarily everyone's going to get what's going on there. Like maybe we're talking about it right now, but the average person that's sort of just living out day to day, they might like what we said with the first topic. There are people that are picking up some of these language cues, the term, and then bring them into their day use, and then suddenly, whether they knew it or not, now they are picking up implicitly within this strain of culture that was put forth somewhat intentionally, somewhat unintentionally, by a group of people that were thinking about who they are and where they want to go. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a
Charles,
powerful
can we
understanding.
take a comment on this? We got Carthagobot on the line if he wants to talk. Did you have something to say here, Carthagobot, relating to this?
Hello, good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Um,
Hello.
Thank you, Charles. I'm a big fan of your show, and you're familiar with me, by the way, without necessarily being familiar with myself. But my name is D'Entremont, and I'm the one who translated Serviam by Arcan, and I've been looking for you guys
Oh,
for a while.
awesome. Yeah, we were wanting to talk to you.
And well, here I am. I've been waiting to jump on a live stream with you guys for quite some time. So here I am, surprise.
Awesome.
Came out of nowhere.
That's good because we had a really weak lineup for topics today. So yeah, let's talk about
Well,
Servium.
hold on. Hold on. Let's see. I don't
No,
think you didn't even contribute a single topic, so
I've been grindcoring
you're
it.
talking about trash right now.
Well,
Well, you guys can go ahead. You can steer the conversation. I'm not going to derail, right? So,
uh,
Yeah,
damn.
sure thing.
O- Okay.
I know it's a bit like on the spot there. I don't want to like I didn't even want to like hijack the conversation or anything.
No, not at
I
all.
just like at least get your contact information. We can talk in private. Someone said I should go on your show at one point to discuss the book, which I'm happy to do.
Do you know what?
Um,
Yeah, let's do that, and we'll actually schedule you in as a proper guest. That's what we'll do because we
yeah,
got a lot to say to you, I'm sure. Um,
Oh, I mean, you guys did a fantastic job on. I think you did it in 2 episodes, right, on my book,
That's right.
and I was very impressed with what you had to say on the subject. So, I have my points. I'd have to honestly, it's been a while, so I'd have to re-listen to what you two wrote. Sorry, what you two said about what I wrote,
so
what
would I.
Arcan wrote, and I am yeah, it's very complicated. So I'm like I am happy to do it at one point, and I have some other things to discuss in private. So.
Okay, I'll let you know what we probably want to talk about the most, and I think it's the most important part of the book, and it's international spiritualism and national materialism, and how it's topsy turvy. So that's just a heads up. But yeah, okay. You can find my channel in the links and leave a comment, and I'll add your contact, or I can add your contact here, and we'll be in touch. Thanks for tuning in. We'll organize an interview.
Okay, how do I leave the message?
1 second. I'll contact you. I got your. Let me just make sure I add you here.
Yes, please.
Meanwhile, Charles, talk about something interesting for a second.
All right, all right. What I'll do is I'll set up the next article. So I mentioned this before. We're gonna take on another Parrot article, 2 episodes in a row. He has great stuff, and this one is particularly interesting in my opinion, and it sets up a lot of what the models that we've been talking about, this vapor trad model. This sets up the sort of underlying evolutionary aspect to that model. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, has the potential to explain why certain traits came about in humanity, like blonde hair, blue eyes, that seem somewhat counterintuitive. And he also explains why intelligence became a evolutionary selected for. And this article, we'll leave a link in the description, highly recommend you go check it out. It's called The Warlord Harem Hypothesis, on the impact of sexual selection via male territorial aggression. And basically what he's saying is that it wasn't environmental selection that caused the traits, human traits, to develop, like cognition, but it was actually sexual selection. And so the sexual
Oh, we lost you, Charles. Charles.
came about through tribal conflict.
Charles, repeat your last sentence. You dropped out at sexual selection. Charles, you dropped out for a second. We lost you when you said sexual selection. Sexual selection.
Okay, so what I was saying about sexual selection is we consider we often consider that environmental pressures are the ones driving our cognitive developments, for example, right? But the reality is that it's sexual selection driving this, and the sexual selection comes from tribal conflict. So this is the theory of male territorial aggression. Basically, the way this sexual selection works is that environmental pressures are relaxed, and now you have focus shifted from fending off the environment, the predators, etc., to intertribal or intra-tribal conflicts. Get it? Who can have the most mates, basically. So, a good example of this that Parrot gives us is the size of the antlers on a buck. So when there's no pressure, they have more resources to contribute to their antlers, and those antlers are used to fight other members of the tribe to gain more access to mating and reproduction. So the more relaxed your environmental pressures are, the more these secondary characteristics are developed, and then the more tribal conflict occurs. This is male territorial aggression. Same thing's true for elephants with their tusks, rhinoceroses with their horns. And then so this continues, and you get this to ramp up, and it can even ramp up to the point where those secondary characteristics almost become a hindrance. The antlers get too large, or you have the example of like peacocks. It's sort of a Fisherian runaway, where those particular attributes are selected for to the point that they become useless after a certain point. And then so what we have is in humans.
Long story short, women like dumb things, and it can lead to almost the demise of your species if you're spending all your time doing a bird dance. But yeah, it didn't work that way for us.
But the case is, The case is in humans, when the intelligence is selected for, uh, that sort of runaway doesn't lead to an obsolescence necessarily, because intelligence has a lot more capacity to continually allow you to overcome your environment, even though something like space exploration isn't necessarily something you need to survive in the environment, but it's something that's allowable for through intelligence. So at the early stages, obviously, if you are more intelligent and you can figure out how to maximize resources, be more efficient and gathering resources and saving extra calories for the future, that leads you to uh, develop a greater amount of tools to continually assert your dominance within that environment. And there's sort of a exponential increase. There's at least a potential for exponential increase. Whereas, like for a buck, for example, well, the horns might get so big, and then maybe you're not even a good combatant against other bucks. So that's the basic premise of this: is females ultimately selecting the males who are more intelligent, because the males who are more intelligent can gain themselves more calories and kill other males within the tribe that are in competition for them for potential mates.
I have no problem with his theory at all, and it's very good to go away from this pure environmental explanation. Um, the novelty of the take is, like, as he says in the conclusion, the only novel part of his take uh, is introducing the competition against baboons and stuff, where most of the people who have proposed this sort of theory have said it comes from like hunting and like scavenging on the savannah. But so his baboon war is kind of an interesting theory.
Right.
I wonder if that's
Because
what
most
we
people
remember
jump
as the
right to
Finno-Korean hyper war.
it's something like that. Or
Now here's what'll
I think he
keep
talks
your
about
head
like potential
scratching. Were we
expansion
the
being a part of
Finnish or
it
the
as well.
Koreans? And which were the no? Okay, yeah. um, yeah, it's a good theory. I I've always presumed it was something like that, but I've never given much thought to the details. I figured environment did have something to do with it as well. For instance, tool use. Once tools are introduced as a mechanism, then intelligence becomes more beneficial in using them, and they can tool use and intelligence could drive each other too to some degree. But you have to get a certain amount of cognition to even get to tools. So
Right. Well, that's the whole point. Is those that have the capacity to use tools or create tools already have had the selection in favor of territorial aggression in the first place. So like the guy who's, well, again, it's the warlord harem hypothesis. So the guy who is the warlord, that primitive human who was able to figure it out and devote more calories um, towards inventing new approaches to tribal conflict. Well, he gets more women, and then what does that mean? Well, more offspring pick up his traits. But then the other side of this too, what I alluded to before with the selections, for example, like blonde hair and blue eyes, is you have this selection for more neotenous traits within the female. So the female sexual selection gets more dimorphic. So he calls this feminization, because um, now these characteristics that potentially aren't going to give you advantage in a purely natural environment, it would be more in a purely natural environment where it's only your physical traits and not that secondary trait of intelligence. Then you're not going to want to have more feminized traits. You're not going to want to have more neotenous traits. You're going to want to have purely masculine traits. And even the lighter skin, having lighter skin, light hair, light eyes in that purely natural state is an advantage. It's a disadvantage if you cancel out all the intelligence that brings you those technological advancements. But now that those secondary traits are irrelevant for your survival because that intelligence sends you so far beyond the natural state of things. Well, now those get selected for, and then over time we get more and more neotness. At least that's what he's saying. So the big blue eyes get selected for by that warlord of multiple neotness women, and then eventually, given a long enough time frame and various migration patterns, you get the blonde hair, blue eyes in a long enough time frame. That's what this points towards.
Uh, Again, I don't disagree. I don't. I'm not a subject matter expert, so I can't. You'd need to have like horrendously good anthropological, archaeological records to really deep dive into this.
Well,
But
he has the links. He has the links in the
yeah,
article for that. So
I'm not.
yeah.
This is he's explored it. I'm just saying he's explored it as deep as we can. With I'd have like I I'm open to alternate theories still as well, but I think it's well supported. And um, I what I guess I think I could see it getting a lot of pushback, in that he's calling blondes and blonde men and stuff more feminized. But if you compare that to like a baboon or something, then yeah.
Well, it's that again the sexual dimorphism, right? So obviously baboons, chimpanzees, just on a quick glance, you're not going to tell the difference between males and females, right? Whereas in us, you can very clearly see the difference, right? Those secondary sexual characteristics get pushed so far beyond, and it's like the peacock, for example, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at a peacock, again, this is an example of that fishery and runaway, where the ornament that at one point signaled a certain natural advantage for a partner got continually selected for by the female, to the extent that now those extra feathers don't really provide a natural advantage and is sort of left over. But it's ran away so far from that survival of the fittest standard that's now the state is you have to have that secondary sexual characteristic um, if you want to have a mate, right? In the peacock sense.
Incel
So that's sort of where
peacocks,
we've ended up as well.
incel peacocks cope and seeth tail
Well,
tail
no,
cells.
well, they're only incel if they don't have big
Right.
colorful feathers.
What's yeah?
They do. They're not incels anymore.
And so now women are like, if you don't make enough money to buy a Porsche, uh, yeah, that basically I'm gonna go to the warlord who
Well,
can.
yeah. Well, and that's the next level. The next step to build off of this theory is, well, now we're in a civilizational context. Our habitat has changed. So this sets up as we've created a synthetic habitat because of our sophisticated ability to transcend the natural environment, right? So at one point, the territorial aggression caused the development of these secondary characteristics um, and our intelligence, and then we ended up with a synthetic habitat civilization that no longer features those selective pressures. Um, so now, what's different? Well, that's where the vapor trad model comes in from Parrot. So you have uh, the martial age, right? That early stage where it's your physical force on the one-to-one level, and your ability to develop and utilize tools to give yourself that physical advantage. That determines who runs the scene. Best martial actors run the scene in the martial age. Then you have the managerial age, where, well, now you've in that synthetic habitat you've transcended so far that now it's about who can control supply lines and
Right.
manage large groups of humans to a certain extent. So it's still selecting, it's still intelligence being selected for, because, well, now there's the next level, and then there's mercantile after that, where the person has the capacity to comprehend and develop economic trade patterns to maximize wealth. And then obviously what he points to is where we're heading to at the moment, at least according to Matt's model, is the manual age, where it's decentralization and who can maximize decentralized evolutionary technology to reconstitute a tribal structure. And so the point is that we no longer have those sexual pressures in the same way as they did in the purely natural environment, because we live in a synthetic environment with these different ages overlapping it. So it's kind of static in the sense that the pressure, the sexual selection pressure, is off of us. But now that's manifested in these various ages of Matt's model.
The sexual pressure is off us in a general sense, in that some very dysgenic pairings happen and some very unfit fathers, unfit men do match up. Or like they wouldn't be selected, nature would select against them.
Well, it's off in the sense that there isn't like
You
cut, warlords with
you cut out again, sorry.
Harems. There is kind of, but not really. Like it's not the norm. In a previous age, in a pre-synthetic civilization, that was the norm. But in mass civilization, a better term would be in synthetic civilization, that is no longer the norm. Where you have monogamous pairings slowly becomes the norm, right?
Yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. So, would he is something like Islam or Mormonism more eugenic? Would you say?
Well, this isn't about eugenic versus dysgenic, and and even those example, I think, I'm not sure what he would say. I'm sure he would say something along the lines of it would be closer to mimicking that pressure, but not even necessarily, because if you remember the pressure in the natural environment requires, number one, the warlord, and number two, the harem. So in our current environment, it's not necessarily warlord, right?
Yes. Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do see what you're saying. Yes.
Because like what happens in the natural environment is the warlord either kills or suppresses the competition for mate selection completely, so that they just don't get selected for at all, and all the mates go to him. But that's not the case in like Mormon or Islam necessarily, in this uniform sense. Like it occurs in that primitive state to the extent that changes the sexual characteristics of man over time. But that's not happening anymore. Hasn't happened since synthetic civilization has been around.
Sure. Well, okay. In the warlord times, a lot of your competition was already dead, and they'd lost the competition that way by dying in battle. Now, the guys who lose out are alive and, trading NFTs.
But well, I mean, even in that case, there's potential to make enough resources that you can bring yourself back into the pool of mate selection. So that's the whole point, is that we live in an age of synthetic civilization where the pressures from sexual selection have been diminished, and so the traits that we have are just stagnant in that regard, at least.
Much ado is made about what traits are being selected for nowadays. I mean, Dr. Dutton talks about it quite lengthy. He's saying the mutative load's getting quite high.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, and I don't put that much stock in a lot of those theories, because it's hard to make an absolute assessment in a particular context, because those traits aren't necessarily going to produce the outcomes that there's the claim that they will produce. So like the spiteful mutant isn't necessary. Like just having those traits doesn't necessarily make you that person. It's
True.
like
And
you
we
could very well be a functioning person who's been educated in, say, virtue, for example, and just end up being a good person despite that, right?
I think, yeah, and you have to point to epigenetics, because if we didn't genetically change from our ancestors in the 1950s or 60s, like not in any noticeable way. The
Yeah.
changes in the population are, well, lifestyle and epigenetics. So
Because I mean, even if you look at, I don't know, like you look at other points in history, if you say it's genetic load causing these problems, okay, well then what caused problems in previous ages? Because people were still, even like I think Dutton talks about like Britain executing a certain amount of their population every year, not having a very positive effect because you get rid of criminals. But I mean, even in Canada, for example, you had, and this might be a little controversial to some people, but you actually did have problems with young men causing like being violent, causing troubles, not listening to authority. This is well written about throughout the 1800s, right? So if it's mutational load, well then where's the mutational load in that time frame that occurred just after those positive pressures of executing a certain amount of your criminal population every year? Well, then you still had some of these problems bubble to the surface despite that. So I don't think you can reduce it to like genetic level. It's not encompassing enough.
I it's such an impossible topic to handle because, again, memetics will factor into the evolutionary story. So will environment. So will, behavior or cataclysmic events, and everything's affected by it, and everything affects it. So I don't know. It's almost a hubris to start separating out small causes and stuff. I don't mind an analysis like parrots that encompasses, a million years across the entire savannah, whatever. It's a bit safer ground to examine a phenomena like genetics, but examining genetics on the day to day, you're in for a lot of pain. It's like trying to predict the weather, a year from now.
Right. I think it's a pretty tenuous claim to say, oh well, X thing is dysgenic, and it's a result specifically of this whatever mutational load that you've observed. But then you look to people that are contrary examples to that. It's like, oh, like someone being ugly or malformed doesn't necessarily equal bad behavior. And then again, how do you assess what standard you're assessing bad behavior, good behavior? Like again, it just gets too mixed up to say to be sort of an autist about genetics and say, well, the most important thing is making a genetically good population. Well, it's not your genetics that make you good, because you can be an elite, attractive athlete and be a scumbag. So um, I think it's better to point towards right moral education, something along those lines, that anyone can meet the standard of, than opposed to something that's as reductionist and materialistic as a genetic explanation. Now, the whole point of this theory that we covered is that it operated in pre-civilizational times, before synthetic civilization, and it has explanatory power in the model that Parrott has outlined, but it's not reducing things entirely to genetics because, well, like we said, the selection pressure of that theory of the warlord harem hypothesis, like we said, those pressures are off now. So um, that's a whole other story compared to just pure genetic analysis. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh no, did you lose me?
Oh, sorry, I was muted the whole time. Yes, sorry.
Oh,
I was just saying I don't. I tend to agree, and I don't really have anything more to say about that. Um, what else do we have
Yeah.
on the
Anyways,
docket today?
yeah, interesting article. Like I said, we'll leave the link in the description when we get that description out, and you can go check it out. It's worth a read at the very least. On the docket, well, that was basically everything I think I outlined for us to tackle today. So,
I saw the new Dune movie. I
you
know
just saw
I'm
it?
like slowpoke here, but I just saw it.
Oh,
Um,
what do you think?
Good movie with some bad casting choices, but really good. Love the visuals, love the soundtrack, and I
Well,
think
that's
the
good to hear.
treatment. I think the treatment of the story is pretty good.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. I didn't watch it. I've never seen Dune, never read Dune. I don't actually know anything about it.
Well, I'd highly recommend it if you want a good, like, really wild psychedelic sci-fi adventure.
All right. Well, that sounds appealing.
Um, did you have a good Easter, Charles?
Yeah, I had a good Easter. Went to church. Lots of church time. Nice and wholesome. Lots of food. Lots of family. It's what you need to be doing. You need to be eating food and hanging out with family.
Do you know,
And
I saw my family too, but they drove me a bit nuts this year. Some years I like my
oh
family
no,
a lot. Sometimes they're a lot to take. You know, my dad's an old
yeah, he
cranky
just
bastard now. It's the truth of it. He's kind of a grumpy old retired guy now. Sometimes
uh,
he's fun to be around. Sometimes he's just like, "Ugh."
well, that's what you have to look forward to.
Yeah, I can
Your
tell.
age.
I can see how he got that way. Um, okay. Uh, anyone want to call in? I see Manslow there. I see M. Raise your
No, it's
hand.
not, and it's grassland.
Oh yeah, Grassland. Sorry, raise your hands if you want to chat for a bit. I'm such a boring guy now. I'm so bad at coming up with topics. I've really been focusing on work. I can't emphasize that. Oh, here we go. Good man.
Yeah, on the grind set.
Oop. Sorry, 1 second.
What's up, lads? Just been popping in and out. I just wanted to wish you a happy Easter. Glad you're doing the live stream thing. I like the format.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice.
We've
Happy
already
Easter.
Happy Easter. Yeah, we've already seen it has some potential for surprises. We had tried to track him down to get an interview for some time after we read Servium, and we'd kind of forgotten about it. But it's we have that to look forward to now. You got any
Yeah.
thoughts
No,
on? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the genetics conversation. Now, do you think you can put too much down to genetics, or is it overemphasized?
I only caught the tail end of that, but I'm not. I'm not particularly educated. I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you think
It's
there's a lot of mutants running around?
nurture versus nature debate, isn't it?
To some degree, yeah. The environmental could be said to be the nurture. The sexual selection is nature, well, or some combination thereof. But and I know you
It's
were
got to be a
produced.
healthy balance of both, but you can't really have one without the other. Maybe I don't know.
Well, it stands to reason. You need to be something, and you need somewhere to be, and both those things are going to have their impact. I agree. The what else? What else? You see any good memes this week, or anything in the news lately?
I don't know. The news was mostly dead this week. I don't. I mean, like the only thing I saw is there's more of that. What was it, Bill C11 stuff? But we already did a whole takedown of it previous episode. Just more completely just governments being completely out of touch
I saw
and not
that
understanding the internet.
that boomer today caught a 403 trying to log on to guns.com and thought it was Bill C11. Did we confirm or disconfirm
No, he was completely wrong. It was literally just a website error.
Well,
And so what we're talking about is we were like Boomer thinks that some website is being restricted by the Canadian government, and it turns out it was like the website was just down. And if you try to get onto it through a VPN for a different country, oh, guess what? It was still down. And so, anyways, point is, Boomer is worried about you know the CCP tyranny in China and Canada, and yeah, they're just kind of like owning themselves, self-own, because they don't understand the internet,
to
just
the
like the Canadian government doesn't
to,
understand the internet.
I want to talk to the guy in the YouTube chat just for a second. I can't get to it easily right now through my Streamlabs because it's not lit. It's got a bit of a glitch, but I see you there, buddy. Don't worry.
Got someone in the YouTube chat. Oh, nah, nice.
Yeah. Yes. That's. I can see you, but I can't talk back. Not without tinkering a little bit, which I can't. I'm not a very good producer. I can't tinker and talk at the same time.
You know, I did see something fun last night. I cringe watched Justin Trudeau's new personal YouTube. I think you guys are giving him a run for his money here in views and interactions. So good work.
What was his interactions like? What was engagement?
There'd be like a video with like 700 views, 13 likes. I think his most viewed was 15,000. That was the only one over 2,000 views. It had like 2,000 comments. A lot of them just shredding them. It's bad. It's at Justin Trudeau or something. I don't know. Daily Rake had it.
Oh wow.
Well, if your head of state makes a YouTube and he can't do more than average more than 1,000 a video, he's in a pretty poor spot.
This reminds me of when all the like blue check marks with 1 million followers get like 2 comments on every one of their posts tops. You know, it's.
Yeah, no, and like one of our guys on Twitter with like 1,000 followers is getting like 10,000 likes.
Actually, I just saw the music guys chatting in our little dedicated music chat, and they were saying like Black. What's that band's name? Black Sabbath SS? No, Black.
Black Magic.
Black Magic SS. Sorry, I'm mixing 2 things up. Yes, I guess they have almost like no presence because they're so censored and all that, but they can sell out almost any size T-shirt run, concert, live thing instantly, right?
Yeah, they do pretty well for. But that's one of those things that's like a cult following that they developed over the years. But still, it's impressive for being completely censored to what they have like hundreds of thousands of views while being this really obscure. Again, to be honest, it's actually pretty trash. Like, it's not good music in my opinion. But I mean, that's what you get for building a sort of mystique that no one else can replicate is success despite being censored. Oh, Manslow just posted the Trudeau YouTube. Looks terrible.
He's so astroturfed. I think it's a funny thing to say that the prime minister is astroturfed, but he is.
Well, I mean, I don't even think it's astroturf. Like, if you're astroturf, you should at least get more than 7,000 views if you're the prime minister of a country of 35 million people.
Anonymous is not just a
Space
multitask.
video. Space video. He did like an interview with that Canadian going to space. It's a low pro shill for the budget, but he's like talking. On one hand, Canadians are battling with feeding themselves and their families, but we're going to space, baby. I'm just so excited. It's well worth the watch. 3 minutes. I think he's got 1,000 views on it. It's incredible.
That's that's embarrassing, to be honest. Well, let's not. How about let's not give him any more of these. I think he doesn't need them. He can float on without us shilling him. Anyways, I don't know about UNP, but I think that's everything I have for the day.
Yeah, we can keep it short and sweet. I have no problem with that. we'll have another show next Sunday. We're going to be doing Sundays mostly. Just, of course, it didn't work very good with Easter this week. And Anonymous, I'm not promising that I'll get better at producing anything or multitasking or answering chat, because we do think we're Canadian. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you get what you get.
Pretty much.
We can barely even keep up with marketing this show, so I don't know if we'll get the live production down pat. But
if you want to come chat, if you want to come like call in, you got to reach us on Telegram, and you can follow the links in the description to get there. I think. I wouldn't guarantee it, but I would wager. Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone like, share, subscribe. If you have any, I'm sorry about the audio there, Winkler. We'll be back next week.
Share with your friends and family. Make it good, wholesome fun. Anyways, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.